Sutta number 20, Vitaka Santana Sutta, the removal of distracting thoughts. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. There he addressed the monks thus, "Monks, noble sir," they replied. The Blessed One said this, "Monks, when a monk is pursuing the higher mind, from time to time he should give attention to 5 signs. What are the 5? Here, monks, when a monk is giving attention to some sign, and owing to that sign there arise in him evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, and with delusion, then he should give attention to some other sign connected with what is wholesome. When he gives attention to some other sign connected with what is wholesome, then any evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, and with delusion are abandoned in him and subside. With the abandoning of them, his mind becomes steadied internally, quieted, brought to singleness and concentrated. Just as a skilled carpenter or his apprentice might knock out, remove and extract a coarse speck by means of a fine one, so too when a monk gives attention to some other sign connected with what is wholesome, his mind becomes steadied internally, quieted, brought to singleness and concentrated. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says, when evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, hatred, and delusion arise, then we should pay attention to some other object connected with what is wholesome. For example, if you have sensual thoughts or sexual thoughts arise, then instead of paying attention to a sexual object or sensual object, then you pay attention to some other sign, for example, asubha, loathsomeness of the body, or impermanence of everything in the world. Or if you have thoughts of anger, hatred arise, then you pay attention to the opposite, metta, loving kindness. And if you have thoughts connected with delusion arise, that is hard to see, but if you happen to notice it, then you can contemplate on the Dhamma. That is, all these are connected with what is wholesome. Okay, to continue. If while he is giving attention to some other sign connected with what is wholesome, there still arise in him evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hatred, and with delusion, then he should examine the danger in those thoughts thus. These thoughts are unwholesome, they are reprehensible, they result in suffering. When he examines the danger in these thoughts, then any evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, hatred, and delusion are abandoned in him and subside. With the abandoning of them, his mind becomes steadied internally, quieted, brought to singleness and concentrated. Just as a man or a woman, young, youthful, and fond of ornaments, would be horrified, humiliated, and disgusted if the carcass of a snake or a dog or a human being were hung around his or her neck, so too, when a monk examines the danger in those thoughts, his mind becomes steadied internally, quieted, brought to singleness and concentrated. I'll stop here for a moment. So here, the second way of removing distracting thoughts, unskillful thoughts, is to think of the danger in those thoughts, how it can lead you to unwholesome, to woeful planes of rebirth. When we realize the danger, then you quickly remove them. Okay, to continue. If while he is examining the danger in those thoughts, there still arise in him evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, hatred, and delusion, then he should try to forget those thoughts and should not give attention to them. When he tries to forget those thoughts and does not give attention to them, then any evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, hatred, and delusion are abandoned in him and subside. With the abandoning of them, his mind becomes steadied internally, quieted, brought to singleness and concentrated. Just as a man with good eyes who did not want to see forms that had come within range of sight would either shut his eyes or look away, so too when a monk tries to forget those thoughts and does not give attention to them, his mind becomes steadied internally, quieted, brought to singleness and concentrated. I stop here for a moment. So here, the third way is not to pay attention. If you try the first way, it doesn't work. The second way, it doesn't work. Then you try the third way, not to pay attention. These probably are all connected with, say, like when you are meditating. You are meditating and all these unwholesome states arise. Here the Buddha is trying to tell you what to do. Okay, the fourth one. If while he is trying to forget those thoughts and is not giving attention to them, there still arise in him evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, hatred and delusion, then he should give attention to stilling the thought volition of those thoughts. When he gives attention to stilling the thought volition of those thoughts, then any evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, hatred and delusion are abandoned in him and subside. With the abandoning of them, his mind becomes steadied internally, quieted, brought to singleness and concentrated. Just as a man walking fast might consider, why am I walking fast? What if I walk slowly? And he would walk slowly. Then he might consider, why am I walking slowly? What if I stand? And he would stand. Then he might consider, why am I standing? What if I sit? And he would sit. Then he might consider, why am I sitting? What if I lie down? And he would lie down. By doing so, he would substitute each grosser posture one that was subtler. He would substitute for each grosser posture one that was subtler. So too, when a monk gives attention to stilling the thought volition of those thoughts, his mind becomes steadied internally, quieted, brought to singleness and concentrated. Stop here for a moment. This here that I have translated as thought volition, it is vitaka sankhara. Vitaka is thought, and sankhara is volition. Generally, many places we come across this word, sankhara, and the meaning that is appropriate is actually volition. Just like in the 5 khandhas, one of the 5 aggregates, body and mind, is sankhara, and there it is translated, it is volition, will. So in other places also, unfortunately, a lot of books translate like here, they call it thought formation. This word formation, recently I think Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, the Samyutta Nikaya, he says volitional formation. So he goes back to volition again, but previously they always translate as formation. And to me, this word formation is one of those blur words, and they don't really understand what it is actually. So they try to use a word that encompasses many things. So they think this word formation can encompass many things, including volition. But here, what do you mean by stilling the thought volition? When we have a thought, there is a volition to continue that thought. For example, if you have a thought of sensual desire and you get excited, you want to continue thinking, or if you are very angry with somebody, then you keep thinking and thinking. So when you start to examine this volition behind the thinking, then it starts to slow down. Why am I continuing to think in this direction? That's why the simile given here, just as a man walking fast might consider, why am I walking fast? What if I walk slowly? So here we try to see where the thought comes from. The thought comes is because we have the intention to continue thinking. So this thought volition or thought intention is actually to me the intention to think. And if we start examining it, then it will slow down. If we don't notice where the thought comes from, then we just continue thinking. Okay, to continue. If while he's giving attention to stilling the thought volition or intention of those thoughts, there still arise in him evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, hatred, and delusion. Then with his teeth clenched and his tongue pressed against the roof of his mouth, he should beat down, constrain, and crush mind with mind. When with his teeth clenched and his tongue pressed against the roof of his mouth, he beats down, constrains, and crushes mind with mind, then any evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, hatred, and delusion are abandoned in him and subside. With the abandoning of them, his mind becomes steadied internally, quieted, brought to singleness, and concentrated. Just as a strong man might seize a weaker man by the head or shoulders and beat him down, constrain him, and crush him, so too, when with his teeth clenched and his tongue pressed against the roof of his mouth, a monk beats down, constrains, and crushes mind with mind. His mind becomes steadied internally, quieted, brought to singleness, and concentrated. Stop here for a moment. So this last one is using the strength of his mind to crush those unwholesome thoughts. But you're not going to be able to do that with a scattered mind. So you can only do that if your mind is strong enough. You're able to focus it. Monks, when a monk is giving attention to some sign, and owing to that sign there arise in him evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, hatred, and delusion, then when he gives attention to some other sign connected with what is wholesome, any such evil, unwholesome thoughts are abandoned in him and subside, and with the abandoning of them his mind becomes steady, internally quieted, brought to singleness, and concentrated. When he examines the danger in those thoughts, when he tries to forget those thoughts and does not give attention to them, when he gives attention to stilling the thought, volition, or intention of those thoughts, when with his teeth clenched and his tongue pressed against the roof of his mouth, he beats down, constrains, and crushes mind with mind, any such evil, unwholesome thoughts are abandoned in him, and his mind becomes steady internally, quieted, brought to singleness, and concentrated. This monk is then called a master of the causes of thought. He will think whatever thought he wishes to think, and he will not think any thought that he does not wish to think. He has severed craving, flung off the fetters, and with the complete penetration of conceit, he has made an end of suffering. That is what the Blessed One said. The monks were satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. That's the end of the sutta. So this sutta is giving us this way of dealing with unwholesome thoughts that arise, especially during meditation. So the first one is to give attention to some other sign which is wholesome, instead of giving attention to the sign that is unwholesome. For example, the Buddha says, when we notice the beauty of some being, then lustful thoughts arise. So instead of observing or noticing the beauty, we notice the opposite, asubha, the unattractiveness of the body, for example, or the impermanence, how that body very soon will grow old and ugly. Or when hatred arises, then we give attention to metta. Then the second one is to realize the danger in those thoughts. When you know the danger in those thoughts, then you will be able to get rid of it. Then also you have to know the Dhamma quite well to realize the danger in them. The third way is to try to forget the thoughts and not pay attention to them. The fourth is to observe the thought volition or the thought intention and slow down the thoughts. And the fifth is to use the strength of mind to just beat down your mind and quieten it.